Hi folks, Chris here of Strata Studios. Today we have a video of how I make rubber molds for injecting for the lost wax cast process. The first thing that I would like to point out is the aluminum frame that I use for making the mold. I've taken and marked the center and then drilled out the diameter of what I use for sprue material. This allows me to know that when I put the model into the mold that pressure won't move the model around and it will always stay primarily in the center of the mold that I'm making. Here is a simple way to measure, mark, and cut the size of pieces of rubber you will need to make your mold. Taking the strips of rubber, lay the mold frame across the end of a strip, making sure that one end of the strip is flush and even with the inside edge of the mold frame. This then allows you to use the opposite edge as a guide to mark the size that you need. Then simply cut what you've marked and you have a piece the size of the mold frame. Once you have sufficient number of pieces to fill your mold, in this particular mold I need 9 layers to fill the mold properly. Now taking the model that you're molding and laying it on the centermost piece of what will be your mold, simply trace the outline of the model onto the sheet of rubber and then cut it out as closely as you can. When you're cutting out these pieces that will fit in and around your model, you don't have to be absolutely perfect, because if you've left any gaps, you can go back in afterwards with smaller pieces of rubber and pack any voids that you may have. Now you need to take and cut little notches out of one end of the 2 layers that would be above and below the center. This allows a little bit of room for your sprue cap on your model. When using this kind of mold rubber, there is a front side and a back side. This is easy enough to distinguish because of the 2 different colored materials that the company puts. Also, there is a textural quality to the back side that is different from the front side. So as each layer of rubber goes in, you should be trying to remember to put them in front to back, front to back. As you can see, I'm using 2 different colors of molding material. I like No Shrink Pink, which is the pink colored rubber, obviously, and it pairs well with, I found, with Castaldo Gold label. So the central layers of my mold will be the No Shrink Pink around the model, and then the rest of the bulk of the mold is made up with the gold label. Once you have that center sheet of rubber in around your model, and making sure that it's packed down in tight, basically you don't want air bubbles to form in the layers between the different layers of rubber. As I said earlier, sometimes you have models that will have voids that when you apply the next sheet of rubber, you're basically leaving a large air pocket in the mold. Your best bet is to take some smaller pieces of rubber and cut them to fit and then pack them down in and around anything that would create an air pocket. In this particular case, the simple wire leaves have the 2 sides of the stem that I'm then packing with smaller pieces of rubber. and anything that I may have cut too small or too large, if I've left a gap anywhere, I will pack with more rubber. Once you're satisfied that you have all of the little voids packed as best you can then move on to your last layers and seal the mold up. You want to be working with clean tools and clean hands when you're working with uncured rubber. The reason for this is simply that you're trying to make sure everything will adhere to itself. So oils, grease, dirt can sometimes prevent that, creating little air pockets, air bubbles. The poker or prod that you're using when you're pushing the layers together, make sure it's not sharp or rough. The main reason for this is simply that when you get to the layers where you're working directly around your metal model, that if you have something that's sharp or will scratch the metal, when you actually get your mold made, that little nick or mark from slipping with a tool will obviously show up in your mold. I'm now putting on the last few layers of this mold, finishing it up. And as you can see with my little poker, I'm making sure that the entire sheet is stuck down to the one before. I like to pack my molds one layer of rubber thicker than I need on both sides of the mold frame before it goes to the vulcanizer. This is simply just to guarantee that I have lots of rubber there that's going to go in and around the model and make sure you have an absolutely clean mold, picking up every little detail. I have an earlier video of how I cut open my rubber molds, but one point that I missed in that video is just the corner keys. If you cut them on a inward slant, when you put the two halves of the mold together, it locks them together and they won't come apart while you're injecting or while you have them stored. Anyway, that's everything for today, folks. I hope there was some information here that was good for someone. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any comments or any questions at all, feel free to ask in the comment section below. I will get back to you. Thanks again. Bye for now.